Alright, before we dive into Metasploit framework, I have something extra to teach you, that is reverse shell and bind shell. So let's first talk about these two critical concepts in exploitation. So as we have discussed, a shell is our way to accessing the target machine. It allows us to execute some commands, control the system remotely, and essentially the shell is our payload and the program we drop onto the target machine after successfully exploiting it. Now there are two main types of shell we need to understand, that is reverse shell and bind shell. Reverse shell, they are most commonly used shells in penetration testing, and a reverse shell works by making the target machine initiate a connection back to our Kali Linux machine. First on our Kali Linux machine, we set up a listener or a specific port to wait for incoming connections, and then we exploit the target and deliver our payload, which contains reverse shell. Once the payload is executed on the target, it tells the target that to connect back to our Kali Linux system on the listening port, and as soon as the connection is established, we gain the whole lot of access on our target machine. Since the target is the one who is initiating the connection, this method is highly effective even when the firewalls are in the place, and most firewalls allows outbound connection because that's how user access the website and send mails, any other internet service, and our reverse shell just takes the advantage of this outbound behavior. And the bind shell works differently. Instead of targeting connections back to us, the target machine opens a port and wait for us to connect. And the working of bind shell goes like, after exploiting the system, we drop a bind shell payload which tells a target machine to open a specific port, listen for connections, and then connect to the port remotely. And then that's how we gain access using bind shell. However, there is a major downside to bind shells, that shell firewalls can block incoming connections, and many secure measures prevent unauthorized port being opened, making bind shell less reliable. That's why in most of the real world scenarios, penetration testers prefer using reverse shell whenever possible. And now think of these shells as a bind shell requires a target to leave their door open of their houses for us to enter, and if security policies block that, we are stuck. For example, when you're entering a mansion, if the gates are open, we try to enter, but if there is a security guard present on the gate, they will block us. We cannot go further. And the reverse shell is kind of different. It lets the target comes to us. Like when we are visiting a website, the website loads on our system. Since outbound traffic is usually allowed and it is more effective. So alright, we have now learned about these shells, how they work, and what the difference between these reverse shell and bind shell is. Now we are ready to move towards Metasploit framework, which is one of the most powerful exploitation tool in our armory. We will be using extensively just like Nmap, so it is important we get a better understanding over this tool. See you in the next lecture.